What is going on, people? You know what time it is. Another episode of Unfiltered coming your way right here, right now. This one officially will go down as episode number 265 in your scorecard. You can jump on board 24/7, 365. It is easy. Artist formerly known as Twitter, X, if you will, at Casey Stern. Give me a follow. Jump up to the top of the bio. Follow through to the YouTube channel. You get all the content and the video of the interviews, the guests, the rants, and much, much more. And of course, where most of you are, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your better podcasts. It is good to have you. And it's good to have Blake Snell signed. A couple of days ago on St. Patty's Day, I said, with a little bit of luck, Blake Snell will sign before opening day. And we got some luck. Now we wait. Jordan Montgomery and JD Martinez, among others. We'll get into that and much, much more, including Snell to the Giants and what it all means. But we are always here, in large part, thanks to our good friends at BetOnline. BetOnline, your number one source for all your sports betting needs. Latest odds, lines, and matchup reports. They got your baseball, basketball, boxing, golf, all the sports, much, much more. They are the fastest and easiest way to get all your wagers, live betting, favorite casino and card games, and they're all available right now, right from your phone. So do yourself a favor, do yourself a fever or a favor, and get on board and sign up today. Get in on all the action. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE. It's BLEAV. You'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline is where the game starts as we get started here. And Blake Snell finally signed the deal. 2 years, $62 million, reportedly an opt-out after the first season. And certainly in line with the Bellinger deal, in line with Matt Chapman, a far cry from what Scott Boras and his clients had wanted to see take place in this offseason in the market. Way fewer years, opt-outs, and creativity to try and bounce yourself right back into a hopefully, quote-unquote, better market next year. Reigning NL Cy Young Award, which, by the way, puts him with not the reigning NL Cy Young, but the runner-up will be behind him somewhere next to him in this rotation in Logan Webb. Rotation now that includes not only Snell and Webb, but Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, and Alex Cobb. Don't forget Robbie Ray, who they picked up this offseason, who is still recovering and should be doing the second half. And it's been a busy offseason for the Giants. We didn't have them on the list. Everybody thought Blake Snell would end up either with the Yankees, where it seemingly he belonged, or maybe they would pay the luxury tax, where, by the way, I think the numbers were on this kind of deal that it would have netted costing them $96 million instead of $62. So certainly a much larger number. But everybody thought, well, okay, that's where Snell's going to end up. Or the Angels, because they seem to have money and have need, and he'll be forced to go there. Now people saying maybe Montgomery will be next, and he'll be forced to go there out to the 5 freeway and go play with Rosh and the Angels. But it is the Giants who have had a busy offseason. Jung-Hoo Lee, Jorge Soler, mentioned the trade for Robbie Ray, the late signing of Chapman to a 3-year deal, signing Jordan Hicks. They have improved their ball club, and they were a team that is not far removed, just 2-3 years out of having a couple-year run where they were more in it to win it than people thought they would be. And when you're looking on the outskirts of town in the National League, outside of obviously what we know about the Dodgers, clearly we know the Braves are right there, and the Phillies kind of a little bit behind them. It's, are you going to get a redemption song of the Padres this year? Who's going to be good in the Central? Probably not going to be the Brewers this year. We're used to that, where they kind of overachieve and get to the top of the hill, but no David Stearns, no Corbin Burns. Team looks very different. So the Cubs and Reds and others have a little bit of wiggle room. Certainly the Cardinals feel like they are a lot better. But when you kind of look now for teams that can take that next step, and I'm not saying the Giants are going to win the World Series. I don't think they're good enough for that. But are they now seasoned and fine-tuned, assuming they stay healthy enough? For Bob Melvin, who, by the way, now in his first year with the Giants, reunites with Blake Snell. Obviously, he managed him in that size season with the Padres. Does he have enough now with this group to overachieve, or just maybe even just achieve with this roster and get to a wild card and get to postseason play? I absolutely think the Giants now a big-time player for postseason play in 2024 in the National League. And I think for Blake Snell, for him, gives him a pitcher's park to go to. He's in a division that he knows. He'll get a chance to get at the Padres, certainly plenty during the course of the year. But he's got a lot of familiarity with that park and with those teams that he'll be forced to face often during the course of the season. And I think, to me, when you look at this for Snell, it puts him in a good spot. First of all, you're getting $31 million a year. And I know that he wanted that large contract that netted him 6, 7, 8 years. That was never going to happen. First of all, he can't go 6, 7 innings in a game. And I'm not trying to get on Blake Snell, but we know the deficiencies. We know the reasons for the fear and the worry and the concern about what am I netting all these dollars into for all these years. Well, now to sit there and net gain $31 million per year over 2, most likely if you pitch well this year, and certainly if you're in Cy Young contention, you're opting out and putting yourself back out to market, and you hope that market will be different. We'll get to that in a second. Going back, though, to Snell and thinking about this, one of the big questions is now going to be, and we had Jim Duquesne on this pod going back just a week or two ago, was talking to him about this from the front office perspective. When these guys get signed, now that, okay, I pitched in a simulated game that Snell did, 4 innings, I believe, going back a week ago, and we know he's been staying in shape, but now only having 3 or 4 weeks, to find a way, really, I mean, much less than that, but you figure it's going to take that amount of time. I don't think he's going to be ready opening day, but how long is it going to take for him to work with his new backstops, to get himself into that game shape where he is ready to pitch and make a big league start? As we sit here, I think what is 9 days away from opening day for those here stateside. And look, it is going to be difficult, I think, to figure that he's going to be on time. How much of a delay will there be? How quickly can he get ready? All those questions are questions. Then you don't want to overcompensate and try and rush, because that's where the body ends up getting at you and you create injuries and things of that nature, certainly with pitchers. So I think for Snell, we'll see kind of how this plays out as he becomes a Giant and how quickly he can get on the big league mound. But for him and Webb, I mentioned Harrison, Hicks now stretched out and starting, and you think about Alex Cobb and the depth of Robbie Ray, who could be coming at some point in the second half of the season. Giants look like they are well suited to be in a wild card mix and have done a good job towards the end here in nabbing Matt Chapman and then adding Blake Snell. What does this mean for kind of where this market is? I mentioned the Yankees. A lot of these teams stuck in the luxury tax issue. A lot of these teams worrying about what it's going to cost them more so than the dollars of what it's going to cost in the contract, but also not wanting to give those large amount of years. And I think, when you look at this situation, as much as I've wanted the Yankees to push the pedal down, and I don't think, for example, they've done enough, what team was going to be a fit for Blake Snell on a larger contract? Now, on a smaller deal like this, you do have to wonder, those teams who had kind of a chance to put themselves into position, were they in the mix? Were they here with offers that gave high AAVs, bumped up for just a couple of years for Blake Snell? What's your take as a fan? Did you want your team to get in on Snell? If you're a Giant fan, are you excited that Blake Snell is part of your rotation? And for Yankees and others who missed out, what's your thought now seeing the way this deal played out? Mention the Yankees, by the way, should get in here. DJ LeMahieu obviously now dealing with another foot issue, and he's had those before. He'll rest, seems, for a few days. Not sure what the opening day status will be, but he's such a difference maker, not only having him at third, but having him atop the lineup. And we know how much Aaron Boone and the Yankees have talked about and discussed the excitement of that and what that could do setting up this offense that now has Soto in the middle of it this coming year. Well, now we're not sure on LeMahieu again, and injuries have obviously been the bugaboo for him last couple of years. Meanwhile, Aaron Judge, the news seems to be good. MRI doesn't show anything. He's had all the negatives on all the tests that you need to have as he works his way back to you, babe. But with the Cole injury and some of the other questions that are sitting there with the Yankees, you wonder, especially on the pitching side, when I would argue, even with Garrett Cole, if they wanted to get a World Series, they needed another starter. Can Jordan Montgomery coming back be the guy? Or does he end up with the Angels? Or does he end up with the Boston Red Sox, where there has been some wooing and Zoom meetings, and certainly there are ties there and reasons for him to want to go to Boston? But to me, as much as, like the Yankees, the Rangers have said, this is where we're at. This is the team we have. We're not going to spend these oodles of money. We're not going to, expand beyond where we're at now. Maybe at the deadline we'll go here, but right now this is the way the roster is going to look. As much as I say that, I sit here and tell you, I really would love to see Jordan Montgomery get back with the Texas Rangers, and I hope that that's what the move is. I hope that he goes back there. What it does for the team is, to me, such an advancement from even where they are now as they look to repeat. When you look at what a great fit he was, especially as you look at Chapman and these other deals, and now with Blake Snell, figuring that the fear with Montgomery, which would be, I don't want to give Monty 5-6 year deal, that maybe you can get 2 or 3 years. Maybe he gets an opt-out to go back out to market that benefits him selfishly on the player side. It puts you in a great position. And I just think for me that it is still such a great fit to have him back there with Nate Eovaldi and the rest of that group. And it puts them in such a better spot, in which is one of the most difficult things to do in any sport, and certainly in all of sports, and that is in baseball, to repeat. Even the Giants, speaking of that franchise, and Bruce Bochy, look at the ties. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, a guy who was managing the Giants at the time, now manager of the Rangers, but they were having a hard time doing it year after year. It was every other year in the 3 World Series that they won. It is a difficult task. I would love to see Montgomery back with Texas. If you're a Ranger fan, I want to hear from you. Let me know. Thoughts on Twitter, X, if you will. Jump in on YouTube as well. Now, this offseason has created a lot of frustration from a lot of fans and media covering it, talking about all the deals and that should have taken place and the free agents who were in there. But what about for the Players Association? Well, reports out from Jeff Passan, Ken Rosenthal, and others that player leaders were expressing frustration at Major League Baseball Players Association executives during a big-time Zoom meeting on Monday night, culminating a week in which players had advocated for the ouster of Union Chiefs labor negotiator and their head labor negotiator, Bruce Meyer. This is something under Tony Clark that we've heard rumbles of for a long period of time. Players not being happy amid an offseason that has seen $1 billion decrease in spending by major league teams. We mentioned Montgomery. We talked about others being out there. Over the previous 24 hours, 21 Major League player representatives, after consulting with rank and file, had agreed on a text chain to back the appointment of a different person in that spot for Bruce Meyer. The guy they want is Harry Marino, a lawyer who spearheaded the unionization efforts of minor league players, and that is the guy that they'd like in this spot. Meyer had been a guy who had overseen the stalled return to play negotiations during the height of the pandemic in 2020. That was really where he got into the crosshairs, and a lot of those issues seemed to develop. Meyer vociferously denied on this call, having this be the case where he had, had issues with this group, and that he had, basically said in this call that he had done enough and had been doing his duty. But the big issue that the players had been talking about, and why Marino had generated support over this, which he pled to expand to veteran lawyers. He wanted to get other people involved. Player sources said it'd line up behind Marino, calling for an audit of the MLBPA's spending. Multiple high-powered agents backed Marino's candidacy. And on the call, Meyer then went the other way, trying to defend himself. We'll see what happens with this potential appointment of Marino, which, by the way, reportedly not supported by all the players on the call. Remember this when you look at this offseason. We still sit there having all of these free agents out there. We've got a lot of money that's been left on the table, and the players want to do whatever they can to find a way to get these players with better contracts. But at the same time, how much of this relates to Scott Boras directly? He's only one agent, but it is of note that a lot of people have talked about perhaps him being in line with the line of thinking that Meyer might have. MLBPA, by the way, had hired Meyer, who served as a lawyer for 3 other major men's professional sports unions, as its senior director of collective bargaining back in September of 2018 initially. So we'll continue to follow that. But the developments all offseason, and the players still being out there, and these free agents still being available, has created all of this controversy and all of this contention, where if you're an owner, you're not forced and don't have any reason to go out and give these long-term deals, because you know that eventually the players will come back to you, and you'd much rather give a high AAV and not that risk of that long-term, because you could always pull and snap that Band-Aid off and get that roster back into place with a higher AAV, but only a 2-year deal, especially if there's a 1-year opt-out. So it gives that player reason to go for that shorter-term deal. We saw it with Chapman, saw it with Bellinger, and now see it with Snell. What do you think happens with Montgomery? Where do you think JD Martinez goes? A guy who still, I know JD Davis didn't come back, but the JD that the Mets should go after, and JD Martinez, maybe his dollars come down, would make a big-time difference in their lineup. No offense to Mark Vientos, but would be an upgrade, even though I don't see the Mets where I now see the Giants, and that is in the playoff picture in 2024. Blake Snell, 2 years, with an opt-out to San Francisco. Giant fans want to hear from you. Always a Giant time to have you on board Unfiltered, where we, as always, are presented by our good friends at